without freedom of the press, no democratic form of government could exist.
We switch you now to London.
I'm standing on a rooftop looking out over London.
Good night and good luck.
Good evening from our CBS newsroom in New York.
NBC presents Chet Huntley and David Brinkley.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings in London, Max Robinson in Chicago, and from our desk in Washington, Frank Reynolds. Good evening.
This historic legislation, the telecommunications law, will create many, many high-wage jobs, will create opportunities and better lives for all Americans.
When the press is free, the people of a country are free. When the press is not free, the people of a country are in danger of slavery.
Keeping you informed with information, news, and the views of people making the news. It's the Nicole Sandler Show on NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. It's time for him to tweet again. But first he'll have to check in with Fox News, 'cause that's the only place he gets his views. And that's how things get planted in his brain, where they remain. And it confounds the science. The problem is he's not alone. He tweets to people on his phone that global warming is a giant hoax, perpetuated by the liberal folks. And he hires people that all think the same, that play his game. And it confounds the science. When he talks to crowds of four, he sees 10,000, maybe more, believing they all think he's God on earth and was the product of a virgin birth. And if you disagree, you're the victim of fake news or feminist truths. And it confounds the science. Fool says he you do not know. It makes me smart from so much dough. I know exactly where the problems are, but his solutions are beyond bizarre. 'Cause his words never quite a sentence make, and thus he spake. And it confounds the science. No limits on pollution now. There's not a thing we don't allow. Dump the garbage in the waterway. Spray the toxins where your children play. All the signs say that life on the planet is headed for a downward fall. Go to the mall and continue to confound the science.
It confounds the science. Ah, yes. You know, it took me a long time to find out who was behind that wonderful Simon and Garfunkel song parody, Confounds the Science. Perfect. It's sad and funny at the same time. That's not an easy feat to accomplish. There's a website called, before I get it wrong, Parody Project. It's parodyproject.com, and they do these song parodies. And I got to tell you, in this one, Confounds the Science, the guy who is the Art Garfunkel guy looks exactly like Howard Stern. It's kind of disconcerting. just thought I'd throw that out there if you do go. I haven't had a chance to peruse all the different songs that they parody on here, but I found a new source of things that I can open the show with that are kind of funny, sometimes a little sad and funny. But today, I got to tell you, we're kind of in a good mood because we have some good news to share with you.
Tell me something good. Good news blowing in your window. Good news is knocking on your door.
Well, it's good news for me because I live in Florida. And as you know, I've referred to this state as Florida for a long, long time. Yeah, because Florida does really things like, electing Rick Scott, the guy who was responsible for the largest fraud of Medicare in our nation's history. The people of Florida elected him governor not just once, but twice. And now they've nominated him to be the Republican candidate for senator. But this time, Florida lost. Andrew Gillum, who I've been telling you about, I've been trying to get on this show unsuccessfully, but now I'll redouble my efforts again. Andrew Gillum had a surprise upset and came out on top. He beat Gwen Graham, the prodigal daughter. She's the daughter of former governor and popular governor and Senator Bob Graham. At that, only, just like we always say, Andrew Cuomo is no Mario Cuomo. Well, Gwen Graham is no Bob Graham. Her record, in her one term in Congress, was abysmal. She voted with the Republicans most of the time. She was not a progressive by any means, and barely a Democrat. And we had such a really abysmal slate of candidates. I mean, there was Gwen Graham. There was Philip Levine, the very ambitious former mayor of Miami Beach, who always loved seeing his name in print. I never followed the story, but Boca Brittany Summers always told me there was some weird Russian connections with Levine. And what's really weird is his sister was a friend of mine in high school. He followed me by 3 years at Hollywood Hills High School. I don't remember. I'll have to ask my sister if she remembers him. Philip Levine. Never mind, though, because he placed third. We had, what's her name? Gwen Graham came in second. Then the other people, what's his name? How quickly we forget. Jeff Green, a guy who spent zillions of dollars. Okay, not literally zillions, but millions. I did have the, where is the, hold on. I had all the numbers. Let me see if I can't. My computer is being really squirrely, and I restarted it and everything. Come on, computer. I hate it when this happens. I think Chrome did something. Is anyone else having problems with Chrome these days? All right. It freezes up on me. All right. So where did I? Okay, here it is. How much money they spent. So you had Philip Levine leading the pack, spending $37.7 million. I knew the guy was rich, but that's ridiculous. $37.7 million Philip Levine spent for his third place showing in the Florida Democratic gubernatorial race primary. Jeff Green came in second with $34.7 million. Jeff Green, a billionaire who I guess made his money in credit default swaps. Nice guy. He's also a member of Mar-a-Lago, who claims to have, fought back against Trump. But there are I think it was Philip Levine, read an ad nauseum that showed Jeff Green calling Donald Trump, a great guy. And he's with him all the way. So there was Philip Levine, Jeff Green, Gwen Graham, okay, she spent $16.3 million. Now, that's a lot of money. Maybe not when you put it next to $34.7 or $37.7 million, but $16.3 million on a primary race for governor. A guy named Chris King, who I couldn't tell you the first thing about, spent $7.8 million. I don't even know where he showed up. And then there's Andrew Gillum, $6.6 million. We didn't see many TV ads. I think I saw 2. Seriously. He had, but what he did have was the support of all the progressive groups, from bold progressives, the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, to Democracy for America, to Move On, to People for the American Way. Of course, our friends at Blue America. Every single progressive group was out there working hard for Andrew Gillum, and that's how you get it done in a grassroots manner. Andrew Gillum, who nobody saw coming. And we were watching the numbers, and there was like him and Gwen Graham sort of fighting it out. First, he was in third place, and then he moved up to second. And then he and Gwen Graham kept going back and forth by just like a few votes, like less than 100 votes. And then I went and I took a shower. And then I came out, and I turned it on again, and he was in the lead. And then I had to turn it off for a while. I was just getting too nervous. So I turned on... we were watching something on Hulu. And then I happened to pick up my phone because I heard a little ding that signaled that I got an email. And I saw the news that Andrew Gillum won. He is a true progressive. He is the real deal. And the fact that Florida nominated a real progressive is astounding. But this is what happens when people get motivated to vote. In the last election, the Democrats put up a woman named Alex Sink. She was, a sort of a Democrat name only. She was a Republican light. She was just like the rest of them. And she gave people no reason to come out and vote for her. And they didn't. And we got saddled with a second term of Rick Scott. This time, not only do we have a great candidate to vote for at the top of the ticket, the governor's race is the top race in Andrew Gillum. We have a real progressive who advocates for Medicare for all, for a $15 an hour minimum wage. I mean, all the things for tuition-free college. I mean, all the progressive ideals. Yes, Bernie Sanders came to Florida to campaign for him. The scary thing was we're looking at this Senate race with Bill Nelson, who is a lump on a log. He's just good for nothing. He's just there. The only thing I could say is with a D next to his name, at least he gives the Democrats one extra number. And for that reason alone, if you're in Florida, you have to vote for him over Rick Scott, who is a criminal, who shouldn't have been in Tallahassee all these years, let alone be sent to Washington as a senator. Are you kidding me? The guy's a crook. But having Andrew Gillum at the top of the ticket will drive, other voters who might not otherwise have been motivated to vote for Bill Nelson to just then vote, the party line down the ballot. So there's good news here in Florida, really good news. This is, really surprising good news. And there was good news actually out of Arizona in their governor's race as well. Now, I don't know as much about the dynamics of what's going on in Arizona, and I don't know anything about David Garcia other than if he wins, he's the Democratic nominee for governor in Arizona. If he wins, he'll be the first Latino governor elected in more than 40 years. In Arizona. Overall, a pretty good night. I think we'll talk with Digby a little bit about it, but I'll tell you what, just let's get going and get the rest of the news, shall we? Because I got a lot of it in What's News. So we'll do it live.
I read the news today.
Oh, boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Upset was the word of the day in yesterday's primary for the Democratic nomination for governor in Florida.
This is a shocker. His name is Andrew Gillum. He's the mayor of Tallahassee. He led in no polls coming into tonight. I don't think he was in second place in a single poll coming into tonight. And yet Andrew Gillum is now the Democratic nominee for governor of Florida. He has upset the front runner in this race, Gwen Graham, former congresswoman, a famous name in Florida. Her father was a governor, a U.S. senator. what happened. Andrew Gillum, he was endorsed, by the way, what does he represent ideologically? He was endorsed by Bernie Sanders in the home stretch of this campaign. If you can place him a little bit, the mayor of Tallahassee. So what happened, though? A couple things to explain this. Number one, obviously, he did well in his base here, but here, go down to South Florida. What really powered Gillum, Broward County here. You see, he ran up the score. This is not his home region in the state, and Gwen Graham did terribly down here. Graham was supposed to
tell you
hold
about
her
Broward
own,
County.
do better up by her base. Instead, Gillum just ran up the score here. Also, go down to Miami-Dade. This is Phil Levine, the third candidate in the race. This is his home base. Gillum winning this outright again. Graham finishing very, very distant third there. So Graham got crushed in South Florida here. Gillum did very well down there. He also did very well in Orlando. This is Tampa, Hillsborough County. He's actually going to win that there over Gwen Graham. That wasn't supposed to happen. Big margin for him in Jacksonville. And then how about this? Gwen Graham, this is her home base. This is where that congressional district she represented was, the Panhandle there in Florida. She was supposed to run up the score here. You can see this is Gillum's color here, this dark blue. You see some of those counties he won outright. Others he was competitive in. So all around, this is just a shocking performance. And what it does is it sets up a very interesting general election here. This is a candidate of the Democratic base, certainly Gillum, an insurgency here, I think you could call that. Who's he going to run against? He is going to run against Donald Trump's endorsed preferred candidate in the Republican, Ron DeSantis, the congressman there. He defeats Adam Putnam, establishment favorite there. The Republican establishment thought Putnam is by far, they felt, by far more electable than DeSantis. DeSantis wins this thing in a runaway. So Democrats are going to look at DeSantis and they're going to say, this is a very vulnerable Republican in a midterm year, in a midterm environment that looks good for Democrats in a state. It's been a long time since a Democrat won here.
And it's about time. So this guy, Ron DeSantis, was a nothing. He was a backbencher congressman. I don't know how many terms he served, probably only one. Honestly, I had never heard of him before. He's from northern Florida. And before Donald Trump endorsed him out of the blue, the guy he was running against, Adam Putnam, he was in the cabinet before. I think he was the agriculture secretary or one of those kind of things. This guy has been running for the Republican nomination for governor like his whole life. And Trump comes in not knowing anything about the Florida politics and endorses the other guy, who, of course, wins. Now, Ron DeSantis, nobody said he's a brain surgeon or anything. One of the first things he did was open his mouth and insert his foot.
Well, look, I mean, this is Florida elections are always competitive. And, this is a guy who, although he's much too liberal for Florida, I think he's got huge problems with how he's governed Tallahassee. He is an articulate spokesman for those far left views, and he's a charismatic candidate. And, I watched those Democrat debates. None of that was my cup of tea. But, I mean, he performed better than the other people there. So we've got to work hard to make sure that we continue Florida going in a good direction. Let's build off the success we've had on Governor Scott. The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up by trying to embrace a socialist agenda with huge tax increases.
Oh, he just said to monkey this up. And yes, if you're thinking this guy sounds a little racist, you'd be correct. The articulate quip, the monkey remark, and there was one more in there that I'm drawing a blank. But wow, I mean, not even 20 minutes into his race against possibly the first African American governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis pulls out the old racist dog whistles. Andrew Gillum is just a classy guy. Here's how he responded to that.
Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are both scraping from the bottom of the barrel. I actually believe that Florida and its rich diversity are going to be looking for a governor who's going to bring us together, not divide us, not misogynist, not racist, not bigots. They're going to be looking for a governor who is going to appeal to our higher aspirations as a state, who is going to talk about what it means to build a Florida that makes room for all of us and not just some of us. DeSantis can do the bidding of big business and big lobbyists and Donald Trump in his divisive rhetoric. I'm going to be here to do the business of the people of the state of Florida. That's the job of the governor of this state. Oh, yes. Now, last night, Andrew Gillum called in to, Don Lemon on CNN, and Don Lemon asked him, how'd you do it? And again, here's what Andrew Gillum said.
I think my opponents collectively spent $90 million to our $6 in this race. And, we just kept, my wife refers to me as Seabiscuit. We sort of were counted out at many points. People thought we would not make it, but we kept going slow and steady, retailing our way all across the state of Florida, a state of 20 million people. People didn't think we had a chance, but we did. And thanks to the outpouring of support from, again, regular, everyday, working people who basically decided that they had had enough of losing. They've had enough with the status quo, and that they wanted a candidate who isn't necessarily perfect, but one who reflects their values, one who reflects the everyday lived experiences of people in this state. That's what we tried to deliver, and all over this state, that message carried. What I've said to folks, again, in all parts of this state, is that doesn't have to be a red or a blue or a purple issue. The job of the governor of the state of Florida is to do what is in the interest of all the people of the state of Florida. That's what I've committed to doing. I'm a Democrat, but most importantly, I'm a Floridian who wants to build a state that has room for everybody. And that message is what we talked about throughout the primary, and we're going to double down on that into the general. And for a voter who, again, will find me not a candidate they can choose, maybe for superficial reasons, then, God bless them. But my belief is that there are more voters with basic and common sense values who believe that we can do the right thing in this state and, again, win. And that's what's gotten us this far. That's what allowed for tonight's upset. And I believe that is what is going to make me the next governor of the great state of Florida.
Oh, that's so good. I love it. I love when I listen to a candidate and I'm nodding yes, like, yes, this is the guy we need. This is awesome. He's the real deal. Andrew Gillum. And we have a good chance of winning now. And as I said before, I think, Andrew Gillum being on the ballot will help Bill Nelson, and God knows Bill Nelson needs the help. So do we in Florida. In Arizona, 2 female House members will square off for the Senate as Representatives Martha McSally and Kirsten Sinema won their respective primaries, with McSally fending off right-wing crazies Kelly Ward and Joe Arpaio for the Republican nomination. In Arizona's Democratic gubernatorial primary, David Garcia, an Army veteran and education expert, won the nomination to challenge Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, giving him a chance to become the state's first Latino governor in more than 40 years. Trump stepped in it again yesterday. In a private meeting with a group of evangelical Christian supporters Monday night, actually, Trump reportedly warned of violence if Democrats take control of the House of Representatives after November's midterm elections. NBC's Chuck Todd heard a recording.
Here's what the president said in a closed-door meeting with evangelical leaders last night. This is according to recorded excerpts we at NBC News have reviewed. The president warned that if the GOP loses the midterms, quote, they will overturn everything that we've done, and they'll do it quickly and violently. And violently, he repeated. There's violence, he said again. When you look at Antifa and you look at some of these groups, these are violent people. The level of anger is unbelievable, he said. Part of it is because of some of the things I've done for you and for me and for my family, but I've done them. This November 6th election is very much a referendum on not only me, it's a referendum on your religion, it's a referendum on free speech, a referendum on the First Amendment.
Oh, my God. So that's Chuck Todd reading what Trump said to these evangelical leaders. Look, I never had any use for organized religion before, but now this takes it to a whole new level. These people are fucking hypocrites. CNN's Jeffrey Toobin explained what Trump actually meant by that load of horseshit that came out of his mouth.
Let's be clear also about what's going on here. The theme here is, I'm Donald Trump, and I'll protect you from the scary black people. Antifa is widely perceived as an African-American organization, and this is just part of the same story of LeBron James and Don Lemon and Maxine Waters and the NFL players and the UCLA basketball players. This is about black versus white. This is about Donald Trump's appeal to racism, and it just happens all the time, and we never say it, or we don't say it enough for what it is, but that's what's going on.
And we need to call it out. And especially, look, here in Florida, if Ron DeSantis wants to be, the racist in the race against a black man, and Donald Trump is his, Lord and Savior, play those racist tropes down here and see how it works out for you. Because I got to tell you, it's the black people, black women who came to the rescue in the last election. Just wait. Just wait. We got Andrew Gillum here. We got Stacey Abrams in Georgia and Ben Jealous in Maryland. We could have 3 pretty awesome black governors come November. Yeah, keep coming with the racist stuff. See how far it gets you. The governor of Puerto Rico yesterday raised the government's official death toll for Hurricane Maria following the release of a new report.
Puerto Rico's governor just moments ago revising the death toll from Hurricane Maria up to 2,975. This after an independent study was released today. You may remember the official death count up until now had been just 64 people.
I am the governor of Puerto Rico. As a famous president used to say, the buck stops here. So I assume whatever responsibility off my own.
The president yesterday launched new attacks against the Silicon Valley companies that conservatives have accused of censoring right-leaning speech. In a pair of morning tweets, Trump singled out Google, accusing the search giant of promoting negative news about him and hiding favorable media coverage. He's such an asshole. He was asked about it during a press pool spray Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, the wall will be paid for very soon by Mexico.
Sure,
It'll ultimately be paid for by Mexico.
Do you think Google should be investigated?
Yeah, I think Google is really taking advantage of a lot of people, and I think that's a very serious thing, and it's a very serious charge. I think what Google and what others are doing, if you look at what's going on at Twitter, if you look at what's going on in Facebook, they better be careful because you can't do that to people. You can't do it. We have literally thousands and thousands of complaints coming in, and you just can't do that. So I think that Google and Twitter and Facebook, they're really treading on very, very troubled territory, and they have to be careful. It's not fair to large portions of the population.
Oh, my God.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Again, what a jerk he is. What a jerk. Fox News' Shep Smith, once again, calls out Trump for saying things that make absolutely no sense. Oh, whoops, I need to move it in a little bit, I think.
Well, and I think that's a very serious if you look at what's going on in Facebook.
Hold on, it's
they
coming.
better be careful because you're in Facebook. They're really treading on very, very troubled territory, and they have to be careful. It's not fair to large portions of the population. Okay? Thank you very much.
Here's what Shep Smith had to say about it.
Well, Mexico will pay for the wall.
Right.
As we all know. And this new thing, today's new thing, not a thing, but a thing, Google is taking advantage of a lot of people. Google, Facebook, and Twitter, you can't do that to people.
He's reading
They're
Trump
treading
quotes.
on troubled territory.
Oh, my God.
Which means nothing.
Nothing.
John Robb, what is he talking about? Treading on troubled territory? You can't do that? Do what to people?
I think what he's doing, Shep, is he's just venting. He doesn't like the coverage that he sees, particularly in the Google search results. And we pointed out some of what the president may have been either seeing on Google himself or had relayed to him. He sees a lot of Facebook postings that are anti his presidency. But the Twitter thing, to me, was a little strange.
Look,
because
let me tell you, as
nobody's
one who
more prolific than him.
As one who might not like Twitter, all the time for reasons that would be clearly obvious to anyone who ever went there and put my name in the thing, but it's just part of what he doesn't like is the news. It's not the people who are delivering it or the platforms on which they receive it. It seems to be the news itself, because around there the news it's not good, except the fake news. The fake news seems to be pretty good for him. The real news seems to be unpleasant.
Yeah, every once in a while, a news organization makes a fairly substantial mistake. We saw one of those over the past 24 hours. But by and large, Shep, I think he doesn't like the tone of what he sees in terms of the coverage. He doesn't like a lot of the comments that he gets on Twitter. But again, nobody punches harder on Twitter than the president does. So, he might not like what he sees on Google or Facebook, but I think he's got a pretty fair fight going on Twitter.
There are definitely people who punch harder, John. There are definitely that. But you know what?
I haven't met him yet.
You don't feel the punch from the Twitter. That's the thing. It's a sticks and stones kind of thing. Thick skin is required. John, thanks.
Thanks.
Google, one more time. Let me read this to you again. Mexico's paying for the wall.
No.
Google takes advantage of a lot of people.
What?
Google, Facebook, and Twitter, you can't do that to people.
What?
You're treading on some kind of territory.
Huh?
I lost the page, but you know what? It didn't make sense then. It wouldn't make sense now.
There you go. Shepard Smith still speaking truth to power from over there at Fox so-called news. He's got to have pictures of somebody doing something. That's all I can say. And one last story before we get Digby on the line. Donald Trump apparently is still talking about firing Jeff Sessions.
Brand new reporting from the Washington Post on the president's latest attempt to get rid of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Now, you'll recall Sessions recused himself from overseeing the Russia investigation. The Post is reporting, quote, President Trump, who levied extraordinary public attacks on Attorney General Jeff Sessions in recent weeks, has privately revived the idea of firing him in conversations with his aides and personal lawyers this month, according to 3 people familiar with the discussions. At least twice this month, Trump vented to White House advisors and his lawyers about the, quote, endless investigation, end quote, of his campaign, and said he needs to fire Sessions for saddling his presidency with the controversy, according to 2 of the people.
God.
His attorneys concluded that they have persuaded him, for now, not to make such a move while the special counsel investigation of Russian interference into the 2016 presidential campaign is ongoing, the people said.
And there's your news for today. We'll get more into some of these things with Digby in just a moment. So stick around on Nicole Sandler at NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The Nicole Sandler Show is 100% listener supported. Have you given yet? Nicole decided not to put her show behind a paywall, knowing that many can't afford the luxury of paying for a podcast. But if you're able to, she needs your financial support to continue doing this. Consider a monthly subscription. Give when you can. Just visit NicoleSandler.com/donate. Remember, she can't do this without you.
What's that, Leonardo? Who's Nicole Sandler's next guest? Why, it's Digby, of course. Who's Digby? Observe, Leonardo. That's dig for dig and B for B. Digby.
An intro befitting only Heather Digby Pardon. Hello, hello, Digby.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Oh, I'm actually doing really well today because we had a great win here in Florida last night. Andrew Gillum surprised everybody and won the primary for the Democratic nomination for governor.
I know. That couldn't be better, right? I mean, this looks like it might just change some things down there.
Yes. Hopefully,
yeah. Here, fingers crossed.
Because we're actually the people actually have somebody to vote for instead of just somebody to vote against, right? Because he's a real progressive. He's the real deal.
Absolutely, and and he seems to have a unique capacity to sort of bridge a lot of the divides that exist within the party. He has appeal across all sorts of lines, and I think that we were all sort of getting a little bit nervous about Bill Nelson in the general election. Mm-hmm. And if Andrew has the kind of charisma that he seems to have and the ability to bring out all the important factions of the Democratic Party, which would include African Americans, Hispanics, progressives, and all the mainstream Democrats who are desperate to get rid of Republicans and keep Ron DeSantis out of office, God help us, he could win. And I think that, I was really getting worried about Florida. I was worried about Nelson. I've been worried about DeSantis. So this is very good news, I think. And it's also, this guy is very, very good. And he is someone who sort of, I think, has a template for maybe the future that can get us past a lot of this BS that we've been living through within the party and within the country. And so I'm very excited about it. I don't know him well. I only know what I've been seeing in the last few days and then doing a sort of cursory review, months ago about the Florida election. So I'll be very interested to hear what you guys down there in Florida think about it as the next few weeks unfold.
Yeah, I've never met him. I've been trying to get an interview with him, which hasn't come to fruition yet, but now I'll keep trying. But every time I hear him speak, I'm really impressed. He knows his shit. He's down to earth. He says the right things. And everybody who knows him, just speaks glowingly of him. Howie Klein knows him well and, raves about him. You knew Joel Silberman, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so Joel, the last time he was on with me, I had mentioned Andrew Gillum's name, and he's like, oh, he's wonderful. I've known him for years. He's a real deal. I mean, people who I highly respect.
High praise, yeah.
Yes, all say great things about him. So I'm excited for once in an election year.
Well, I mean, that really is thrilling, and it's thrilling, too. I mean, as I said before, this is, you and I both agree on this. I don't know. They always say it's the most important election of a lifetime. Well, this time it's actually true. It really, really is, and it's vitally important that Democrats across the board come out and vote in November. They can take with them whatever reasons they want. I won't argue with anyone on why they're doing it. They just need to do it. And it's very exciting to see perhaps somebody like Andrew coming along and, having that sort of inspirational thing. I think there's another race that's going on that's very exciting in the same way, which is down in Texas with Beto O'Rourke, who is not the same kind of progressive that Andrew Gillum is, but Texas isn't the same kind of divided state that Florida is either. So you have two different people coming at it, but both have tremendous sort of I think what it is that they speak in a way that can appeal to people across all sorts of lines, but also that just sort of have a certain, kind of values-laden, principled sort of foundation to it. You know what I mean? I mean, they just don't seem to have that same sort of focus grouped, kind of canned, approach that politicians so often have. There's something new happening there. It's happening with people, with Democrats across the board, but particularly ones like this who are sort of coming up through the party. It's the new generation, and they are approaching all this in a different way than we've seen in a very long time, and it's awfully exciting. And I would add Stacey Abrams to that one as well in Georgia, who's running for governor. Obviously Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York. I mean, it's happening all over the country. There are a lot of candidates out there in this race who are just doing something different. This is not cookie-cutter politics. I mean, a lot of this, I think the impetus for it was the election of this monster in the White House, but what's come through is kind of a new day for the Democratic Party. And I really, and that's been happening for a long time. It goes all the way, back to Occupy Wall Street, the Sanders campaign, all of that. A lot of feminist action, Me Too. We can look at a lot of various sort of influences that have brought us to this point. But it is, I'm feeling hopeful, and I'm not letting myself go crazy because that would be foolish.
Right.
I think we all need to keep a little restraint on our, assumptions here. But if the Democrats do win in November, I think, we're seeing the beginnings of a more progressive and more aggressive Democratic Party, and that is good news.
Yes, I agree. And these things happen incrementally. I had a caller to the show the other day who was throwing out the old lines that, the Democratic Party doesn't stand for anything, and they're talking about is how bad Trump is. And I was like, hold on a minute. Yes, you could have said that for a while, but right now the people that I'm looking at are saying something. All of a sudden, you have a lot of Democrats running for office under the banner of Medicare for all, $15 an hour minimum wage, tuition-free college, all these great progressive ideas and ideals that Bernie has been pushing, and now it is a platform, and you have a lot of people winning their primaries using those very points as their platform. So I don't think you can say, the Democrats have no ideas anymore. The thing is, the party has to get with the progressives.
And I think that they will. I think that they are. You're even seeing it in the nascent, presidential campaigns that are, you see all these people the Kirsten Gillibrand and Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, and across the board, really, even people like Joe Biden, who are thinking of running. They are all testing all this stuff out. It's clear to me. I don't understand people's. This is something that comes from the mainstream media. I think it's that old hit on Democrats, and it absolutely drives me nuts. This idea, and they've been saying this for years, the Republican Party is the party of ideas and the Democrats don't have anything. That's just nonsense. It's not true, and it's particularly not true this time. These, of course, the campaigns, if they're asked by a prospective constituent what they think of Trump, they're going to say, well, we think he's terrible. Of course they do. They're not going to deny reality. And, if somebody says, are you going to investigate his crimes? Yeah, they're probably going to say, yes, we will, we're going to do our job. We're going to do oversight. That's what we're supposed to be. That's, the Republicans have abdicated their duty. They violated their oath of office, and we're not going to do that. We are going to look into all this stuff. But, of course, they have an agenda, and the agenda is very progressive, and people are responding to it. I just, this is just, everybody has to stop listening to that. It's, between that and the idea that the Democrats are running on impeachment, which they are not.
Right.
It's the Republicans who are running on impeachment.
That's right.
Steve Bannon's out there running ads on it. This is their thing. They are trying to scare their, frightened, old conservative voters into coming out because, to save Donald Trump. It's not the Democrats who are doing that. I mean, I assume that the Democrats are going to do oversight hearings. They'll follow the evidence where it leads, but there's no agenda for impeachment. I wrote about it today in Salon magazine that I would fervently I'd love to see him impeached in the first 2 months, get rid of him, and then we'll start impeaching Mike Pence. That's fine with me.
Me too.
But I don't think that is going to happen because, first of all, investigations take time, and these Democrats are starting at square one because the Republicans haven't done jack. So they got to start over, and then you've got the Mueller thing coming down, and you've got all this stuff. It's not easy to impeach a president, and it could happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's unlikely, and it almost is impossible that he could be convicted in the Senate unless there's, some kind of a bizarre shift in the way the Republicans are handling him, because they are like blind, deaf followers of Donald Trump now, and they're not going to vote for it. So, I'm not saying that I don't think he should be impeached. Of course he should be impeached. The Republicans should have impeached him, for crying out loud. But that's not what's happening here. And in the meantime, you've got Democrats who are out there actually articulating a real agenda, not some Donald Trump, BS fantasy garbage
Infrastructure
that has
week.
no basis in reality. They're out there talking about real things, and I suspect there's a hunger among the American people, all of whom, anybody but a hardcore Trump voter who just votes on the basis of hatred. Everybody else is kind of going to be hungry for something real again in politics. And I think the Democrats, and especially the progressives, are prepared to give them that.
Well, I definitely think so, too. And I'm wondering if the Republicans are just sort of waiting to see what happens in the midterms. I think if the damage is severe enough to the Republican brand, and it's all going to be because of Donald Trump, then maybe some of the dominoes will start falling away.
It's possible.
It's possible, and it all depends on how many of us come out to vote and teach them a lesson.
Yes.
I think if they realize that, Donald Trump might help them win a primary race, but he's going to be poison to them in a general election, maybe some of them will try to start putting some distance between them. And maybe start looking at all the things, that they should have been holding oversight hearings on all along, like we saw Axios report. I know you have it in your Salon piece today, Digby. Some of the probes that this Republican memo is predicting the Democrats will immediately launch into the minute they take control of the House. And you look at the list, and it's pretty stunning, especially when you realize that it's far from complete.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. And what's even more astonishing about that list to me is that the Republicans are putting this out. Oh, look what all the Democrats are going to be looking into as soon as they take office. And what they're really saying is, look at all the stuff we've been covering up for Donald Trump and haven't even spent a minute doing oversight on. I mean, they're basically admitting their own malfeasance. It's astonishing to me, and I'm glad it's out there, because I think that's something that can, that should be kept in the archives, to be pulling out every time any Republican wants to talk about oversight or talks about transparency or whatever else, because it's clear they're accomplices to what Trump is doing, all of them. They're accomplices, and they're no longer just partisans or tribalists or even cultists. They are accomplices to his crimes. They're helping him cover them up, and they're actually admitting it now in public. So I'm a big believer that one of the most important things that the Democrats have to do when they do take over one or both houses of Congress. I mean, it's a long shot for the Senate. Could happen, of course.
Yep.
Go Beto.
Yes.
And but it could happen. And if that does happen, then we'll see that will change the dynamic if both houses go, because what we're going to see in the Senate, if they hold the Senate, is we're going to see people like Lindsey Graham holding competing hearings about Hillary Clinton's emails.
Yep.
I mean, that's clear to me that he's going to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and they're just going to launch into a counter-programming, program over there. But nothing we can do about that. If we don't have the Senate, there's nothing we can do. In the House, however, we are going to have some good people running the committees, and they are going to be spending a lot of time looking into all this stuff, as they should. That's their job. They should be doing it. Meanwhile, I think I can't imagine any legislation is going to pass.
No.
I'm not even sure any minimal legislation can pass, like a continuing resolution to keep the government open. I don't even think they'll name any post offices.
Right.
I can't imagine that Donald Trump is going to do that. So, he's kind of asking for it. I mean, he's made it clear that he's just going to be out on the campaign trail and tweeting, watching TV, watching Fox News, and golfing. So I don't see any hope for any kind of real governing to happen. So, he's leaving the field wide open for Democrats to just, do what they need to do and hold those hearings. Let's see it. Let's see the evidence. Let's hear from. I want Don Jr. on TV
no kidding.
testifying before the House of Representatives.
Under oath.
Yeah, you bet.
A lot the Republicans are making a big deal out of Nancy Pelosi. They've tried to cast her as the boogeyman. I think she's considered more evil among Republican circles than among Democratic circles. That being said, I know that Nancy Pelosi in her day was a very good Speaker of the House. I think it's time for her to move on. The problem has always been, who's in leadership beneath her who would come in and step up. With Joe Crowley out of the picture, it doesn't mean that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez takes that slot, unfortunately. But are you seeing any other movement in the Democratic House sort of under leadership of people who might, I'd love to see Ted Lieu step up and take a bigger role. Do you see any evidence of anybody good stepping up to try to challenge her for the Speaker's position?
To be honest, I don't see that happening right now. I'll be perfectly frank. I get it, and I think that Nancy Pelosi has made a big mistake in not grooming more younger people in her leadership. Cadre to be able to step in and take over. In fairness, there were some people that she had in line, like Donna Edwards and Tim Van Hollen and others who, left for various reasons to run for higher office. And that may be her fault, too. Maybe she refused to leave at a time when maybe it would have been best if she had. But I'm not making excuses. It is what it is, and it was an error on her part. A lot of people say the same thing about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She should have checked out before and had Obama replace her.
Right.
So, these older women, by the way, unlike older men, the older women tend to be, sort of held responsible for not seeing the exit when they should.
That's right.
And perhaps that's true, and it should be true of people, frankly, like Joe Biden as well.
Yep.
But anyway, I think this is my prediction, and my predictions are almost always wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think that what is happening, I think Nancy understands it. She's done, pretty quick now, that there's